Hey folks, welcome back to another review with yours truly, Sam Healey. Today we're taking a look at this little guy right here, Goths Save the Queen. It's an interesting little 4-player game that is really kind of a silent deduction, no communication between the two players. None of that stuff can happen. It's all about playing the right card, deducing what your partner has played, and trying to match it. It's a really interesting mechanism in a goofy little game, really. But let's get down to the table and I'll show you. So here I have set up for you a 4-player game of Goths Save the Queen. And basically it is a battle between the Ostrogoths in orange and the Visigoths in yellow, denoted by the color of their hair and beards. So basically the whole point is that some lines of communications have been crossed. The queen is in danger. One side is trying to go save his daughter, and the other side is trying to go save their queen. And so they're fighting over it. Now, that's the general lay of the land. Now, the basic gameplay is actually pretty nifty, pretty clever, because you have 2 decks. One is the King deck, and the other one is the Warchief deck. Now, the Warchief deck is different from the King deck. The King deck has all of these card backs on them, and it has 2 different possible icons that could denote what's on the other side. But on the other side, you see that one is the definite activated thing, and the other one is just a bluff. So the card that is played face down, as everybody can see it, denoting 2 possible activations, but once you turn it over, there is one definite activation and the other one was a bluff. And you have all of these different cards in here, and they have different combinations. All right? Now, that's the King side of it. The Warchief side has a deck that is for each of the different actions that are available in the game. So these 2 here are definitely the blue activation, the Vulture. So he can go on a reconnaissance mission, or he can basically sabotage the other person's catapult. Those are 2 things he can do. The green card activation, which is this one right here, is activate one of your extra guys and put them on the board, like so. Then you have 2 red ones that can be either load the catapult or fire the catapult. All right, so you have these 2 things, and whenever you do that, the opponent loses 2 dudes from wherever they are. And then you have the brown, which has a whole bunch of different actions. You can either move your army forward, build a barricade, which basically just means you flip the card over so that you show its barricaded side, like so. Send in the rats, which means that the army that you send them into is going to lose 1 guy, or throw your axe, and has the same effect as the rats. 1 army loses 1 dude. All right, so these are the different things that are in the Warchief deck. Now, the cleverness comes in because the Warchief and the King cannot communicate with each other in any way. He simply has to play his card face down, showing the 2 possible things, and then the Warchief has to look in his deck. Okay, well, he's got red and blue. So these are the 4 options that I have to choose from. Now, which one does he want me to do? All right, so I would say, I don't know, maybe he wants to reconnaissance and check out these objective cards out here to see where the queen actually is. So then we turn over, boom. Boom. Okay, well, he didn't want a reconnaissance. He wanted to load the catapult or fire it, whatever. So this is a miscommunication. In this respect, this King card will stay face up like this. The Warchief gets his card back into his hand. So over the course of the turn, if you have bad luck and you miscommunicate, you'll be able to see what has already been played, which will help you deduce later on. But in future turns, whenever a card is played down from a king, the war chief can choose to either definitely communicate well with this card that he played that's face up earlier, or he can risk it and try to nail down which one of these two is possible. So in this respect, he would have three different choices or active characters to activate rather than just the two possibilities here. But at any rate, let's say that he does go ahead and say, okay, well, let's go ahead and load that guy. Going with the definite one here, the catapult would be loaded, flipped over to its side, and then the king would take all of his cards back up into his hand, and the war chief takes his cards up into his hand. So whenever there is a positive, a correct communication between the cards, all characters pick up their cards. But if there's a miscommunication, only the war chief picks up his card and the king must keep his down. Well, what is the whole point behind all of that? Well, one of these cards is the queen. The problem is that they're face down, so sometimes you'll have to do the reconnaissance to try to find out where the queen is. But you're trying to get your army through to the right objective card. Now, there is also a dungeon, which means that you're going to lose a guy if you come here. There is a queen card, which is if you get your army to that card, then you have saved the queen, you are the winner. And then there is also just another battlefield card where your army can be. So when you move up, once you get here, you'll choose which one of these three objective cards you move to. If you choose correctly, hey, great. If you choose poorly, you lose a guy. If you choose this one, well, it's not neither here nor there, but hopefully by the time you're moving your guys up, then you're going to be able to know where the queen is at that point. Now, I've only showed you one side of the equation here. The other army is also doing the same thing with their cards. They also have a king deck and a warchief deck on their side of the field as well. So what happens when let's say you turn over the same action? Both armies want to do the same thing. Well, that's where this comes into effect. No action is ever carried out simultaneously. They all have a very specific order. If you do choose the very same action, whoever has the initiative gets to do that action first. So it is important to follow that order of carrying out your actions so that all of these things can be worked out well. So, for example, reconnaissance is always carried out first, and then sabotaging your opponent's catapult is carried out second. Recruitments are done third. Loading your catapult is fourth. Shooting your catapult is fifth. And then all of the brown actions, the barricades, movement, throwing your axe, and sending in the rats are 6, 7, 8, and 9. So those are how the actions are carried out, and whoever is able to save the queen first is the winner. Now, the game also comes with a small little variant called the Fog of War variant, where these tokens are basically placed face down and shuffled, and then one is chosen for one side and the other one is chosen for the other side. And then once those are down, you can use your vulture's reconnaissance action to look at the card to see what it is, and then later on you can, if your army is on that site, you can use your army's construct a barricade action to remove it, thus removing that restriction from your army. Now, what are the different restrictions that they hold? Well, this one says that you cannot throw your axe into an opposing an opposing army. This one says that you cannot perform reconnaissance actions, looking at the different secret objectives that are down there. This one says you can't recruit your third guy onto the board. And then this one says that you just can't disable your opponent's catapult. You can't sabotage it. So that is Goths Save the Queen. I really think it's a cool mechanic that is inside a game that is seems like it's just a little bit too light for the mechanic, but it's okay because that just makes the game a little bit more fun, because it is a very light-hearted, goofy theme, but it has a really clever mechanic tacked onto it and used. So I thought it was actually really, really fun. It is just a 4-player game. There are special rules that you can use for playing with 2 and 3, and then 6, 7, and 8 players. With the 6, 7, and 8 players, though, you need to have 2 copies of the game instead of just 1, so that's kind of out for most people. However, I mean, you know, go ahead and do it. If you really like the game, you'll go ahead and do it. But as a 4-player game, this one really, really does shine. It only takes about 15 to 20 minutes to play, which is really cool, and it has a lot of really neat interaction, silent interaction, but still interaction as well. And you have to really be careful and on your guard to not let things slip after cards have been played. Oh, I thought you were going to do this because of this, and because that's actually kind of breaking the rules of the game. You really have to make a conscious effort to do that. But you know, in some games, I'm not very savvy with that, because I don't like it when people or games try to make people act unnaturally. You know what I mean? So I didn't know how I would like that. But after having played it a few times, I do think that it is a very clever mechanic, very fun, and very enjoyable. Now, a couple of things that, just a little, tips here and there, is that you really do need to make sure that all of those different actions are carried out in a specific order, because it does actually matter. I mean, for example, if somebody is trying to sabotage your catapult, but you want to fire it on the same turn, well, their sabotage happens before your firing does. So that's important to understand at the very offset. It's also very necessary to make sure you're keeping the flow of the initiative at the very same thing. The first thing that happens in the turn is that initiative shifts. The Ostrogoths, the orange player, actually start with initiative, but then at the beginning of the second turn, that switches to the next player. So that's important, because if the two teams have the same action that they want to carry out, the person with initiative gets to carry that out first. Nothing ever happens simultaneously. That's a very important thing. The most important thing, though, is that you don't communicate with each other in any kind of way. No, winking of the eye or smirking or any of that kind of stuff. No kind of communication whatsoever should be happening between the two teammates. So that's a very important thing. I really did have fun playing this game. It was one of the highlights of the day when we played it. So I think it's very important that you understand that it is a very light game. It's very short, but it does have a lot of fun packed into it. Another thing that I wanted to just kind of highlight was the actual packaging. Everything is packed in here, and it is a small box. There's no wasted space. Well, there's very little wasted space in this box, and I just wanted to pinpoint that, because that's important as far as storing the game and that kind of thing. So that is Goths Save the Queen, a neat little social silent deduction game for 4 players, for up to 8 if you wanted to buy a second copy of it. But I really did enjoy the game. It's lighthearted, it's fun, it's great. Great filler game, one of my favorites. 2 thumbs up for Goths Save the Queen. We'll see you guys on the flip side.